Advanced Micro Devices, AMD, the number 2 position in my portfolio, just reported earnings. The stock is up over 5% after hours. And on today's episode, what I want to do is take a closer look at the results and just my initial thoughts. So we do have an earnings call later today, but right now I just want to do a nice overview for those that just want to understand what's happening with the company. If you want a more in-depth analysis on the company and their earnings and the Q&A session, make sure to hit the subscribe and check out the channel later today, as I will be doing a more deep dive on the company's earnings results, especially in that Q&A session. But like I mentioned, AMD right now, super excited. The stock is fluctuating up almost 4.8% as I am talking. Right now, the stock price is sitting at roughly $123. This was after the company was up nicely 2.8% on the day. So if we take a closer look, analysts were expecting somewhere between 57 cents on earnings per share, and they were expecting roughly $5.3 billion on revenue. If we take a closer look at results, these are going to be non-GAAP basis. Roughly earnings per share were 58 cents, so it did beat analyst expectations by a penny, and revenue was roughly in line with that $5.3 billion in revenue. So pretty much in line, nothing crazy. If it was in line with expectations, why is the stock up a nice amount? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. So overall, the company did report revenue of $5.4 billion if you round up, right? And that is a decline of 18% year over year and is pretty much flattish on a quarterly over quarter basis. They do mention that they deliver a strong result in the second quarter as fourth generation EPYC and Ryzen 7000 processor ramp significantly, right? And these are the new generations that this company just released in their CPU for the server data center market and for the consumer market. They do mention that their AI engagement increased by more than 7 times in the quarter as multiple customers initiated or expanded programs supporting future deployments of Instinct accelerators at scale. We made strong progress meeting key hardware and software milestones to address the growing customer pool for our data centers AI solutions and are on track to launch and wrap productions of MI300 accelerator in the fourth quarter. And this is where if you guys watched my previous episode yesterday, where I kind of talked about what I would be keeping an eye out during the earnings call today, is kind of how they're going with their AI accelerators. We did see from Intel, right, that they had a huge, about a $1 billion pipeline on their AI accelerators, most of it coming from the Gaudi line, Habana Gaudi 2. But I wanted to see how it would go with AMD in forms of their MI accelerator line. And right now we are seeing that, hey, 7 times more increased engagement. And overall, they're seeing huge deployment in their Instinct accelerator. I think that is great news, right? Remember, this is expected to come out in the fourth quarter. So it's definitely going to take some time before we start to see this kind of show up in the revenue. If it starts to ramp up in the fourth quarter, we might not really see the true impact into the first quarter of next year. They do mention, they also kind of gave us guidance really much at the beginning, that looking to the third quarter, they expect their data center and client segment revenues to each grow by double digits percentage sequentially, driven by increased demand for their EPYC and Ryzen processors, partially offset by gaming and embedded segment declines. So this is what we wanted to see, right? If we take, I'm going to take a closer look at some charts that I have for AMD, right? I have kind of their client, their data center, their gaming, and embedded in a bit. But this is what we want to see. The data center market is going to, was kind of slowish. We're going to see this quarter and last quarter. And what analysts and investors were expecting was a nice growth in the second half, quarter 3 and quarter 4. We're still expected to see that with these kind of commentary, very similar to the client market. The client market, we expected a bottom in quarter 1, which was the last quarter. And now we're expecting these nice increase. And that is what we're seeing. So if we take a closer look on non-GAAP basis, revenue was flat quarterly over quarter. Gross profits were flat quarter over quarter. Gross margins were flat quarter over quarter. I don't really care much about year over year because obviously same time, we're going through a whole different cycle in the semiconductor industry right now. So obviously year over year, things are down right now. But again, we are kind of reaching last quarter was expected to be the bottom of the client segment. So I think it's not going to do justice to investors to look at this in a year-over-year basis, because we have to understand that, hey, we are in a different portion of the cycle right now, and I do believe sequential basis is probably a better metric to look at. So now I wanted to kind of take a closer look at some of the highlights that I have from their segment results. But before we go any further, guys, if you are enjoying the episode, make sure to hit the thumbs up. I'm trying to hit 30,000 subs by the end of the year, so anything helps. Also, if you want to learn more about the semiconductor market, you guys know I'm a huge fan of the semiconductor space due to education and my work experience. So this is pretty much what I love to talk about. I do have a membership program for those that want exclusive video. Make sure to hit the join button to check that out. And Finally, I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode. So now if we take a closer look at the data segment, they do mention that revenue was $1.3 billion, down 11% year over year, primarily due to lower third generation EPYC processors, and kind of the demand was soft in the enterprise market, and cloud inventories were elevated at some customers. So for those that are not familiar, the company just kind of moved into their fourth generation AMD EPYC CPUs, and these fourth generations are on a new platform. So it does seem like customers right now, they're saying, hey, look, the third generation, there's no point of us purchasing too much right now. We're going to focus more on the fourth generation. And obviously, there is kind of that slowness in the market form of enterprise and their clouding markets. So they did see about an 11% year over year decrease. But they do mention that revenue increased 2% sequentially as their fourth generation EPYC CPU revenue nearly doubled, and EPYC CPU enterprise sales increased. So this is great news. This kind of showcases that this company is seeing strong ramp up adoption of their fourth generation EPYC CPU. This is bullish case because this is going to continue, especially right if right now they're seeing this double revenue growth sequentially based on the strong sales. And this is during a time when we're seeing weak enterprise and maybe some weak cloud market because of elevated inventory levels for some customers. So imagine when the market picks back up, I do believe we're going to continue to see some nice growth here in their fourth generation EPYC. They do mention that the AMD Instinct MI300A and MI300X GPUs are sampling to leading high performance computing, cloud, and AI customers. Again, I do believe this is going to be a great addition to the company in forms of their AI solutions. The only downside to this, in my opinion, is that it's pretty much in quarter 4 of this year. So I don't believe we're going to see much impact to it this year. I do believe we're going to start to see a nice ramp up to it in next year, right? So that's the only thing I would hate is this year is not going to be fueled too much by the MI300, but from the early commentary, we did see that this is expected to kind of see great adoption. Now, if we take a closer look at client segment revenue, that was roughly $1 billion, down 54% year over year. Again, we're seeing that huge reduction in inventory shipments in the PC market, but they did mention it is up 35% sequentially as they are seeing strong demands for their 7,000 CPU sales, and they grew significantly, and the overall PC market condition is improving as well. Now, I actually wanted to let's take a closer look at the charts, right? So we looked at the data center market and the client market. So we can see the data center market, quarter 1, we did see a bit of a slowdown compared to quarter 4, and quarter 2 was pretty much flattish. So I do believe, like we mentioned, we are going to see sequentially double-digit growth in quarter 3 for the data center market and the client segment market. We can see client revenue, quarter 4 was 0.9 billion, quarter 1 was 0.7. This quarter, it jumped to about $1 billion. So we are seeing great traction here in their client market and in their data center market. They do mention the gaming segment was down 4% year over year in a decline of 10% decrease. We are seeing lower gaming graphics cards. We are probably still in a weak GPU market to be expected. And they do mention the embedded market was up 15% year over year, but down 7% sequentially. If you do remember from my previous video, one of the main reasons the company was down sequentially in the embedded market is because most of quarter one sales was a record for them. It was a record sale for them because they had a nice amount of backlog that they were clearing. Now they kind of cleared a lot of that backlog issue, so they don't have that tailwind from the backlog, which is not necessarily a bad thing if you understand that's happening. But if you just see it in the number wise, you might be like, hey, this is a market that's slowing down. So overall, we can see the gaming market was down on a quarterly basis, and we did see a bit of a decline in quarter two for the embedded market as well. Nothing too crazy in my opinion. I do believe these two markets are going to continue to be somewhat strong in where they're at. Some pretty cool highlights. They did mention that obviously this quarter they did release two new AMD fourth generation CPUs, Bergamo and Genoa. Right now, it does seem like they're getting strong adoptions. We're seeing it from the CPU sales as well. I do believe we're going to hear a little bit more about this in their earnings call. Another thing is with this AI market, especially with the GPU, one of the biggest headwinds that this company is facing or hurdles is the software and optimized solutions where NVIDIA is really kind of ruling the market here. But in their data center event, they did mention that they were partnering up with industry leaders like Hugging Face and PyTorch to enable extensive array of AI models that are optimized and ready to use out of the box on AMD accelerators. And I do believe because of partnerships like this, that the company is able to see that strong engagement on their AI products, especially as we continue to see the MI300. Another great thing about this is unfortunate for NVIDIA. They have too much demand and not enough supply. So those that are not getting their chips are probably coming to AMD because they have no other choice. No matter how AMD is getting that sales, it is kind of good to see that even being second or third place is really good in this AI market when there's so much demand and so little supply. Some other cool things, like I mentioned, the company is definitely pushing into their software solution. They did announce numerous updates to their ROCm platform, which is their server CPU software solutions for the GPU market. It's their server GPU software product, and they did mention that they are enhancing capabilities for AI and high performance computing workload. So that's definitely some great news. Now, if we take a closer look at the current outlook, they do mention for the third quarter of 2023, AMD expects revenue to be approximately $5.7 billion. That is going to be a small increase on a quarterly basis, right? This quarter was roughly $5.4 billion, but it does seem like we are coming to the bottom of this kind of semiconductor market slump that we were seeing, and maybe from here on out we're going to start to see some more increases. The final thing I wanted to take a closer look at is the segment by categories, and three things I really was curious about was pretty much the operating income in data center, in the client market, and in the embedded market. In my previous earnings video, I did expect that we would get to at least operating income break even or close to it, and that does seem to be the case. We can see client operating income was a loss of 69 million versus 172 million a quarter ago. I do believe by next quarter, we are finally going to be positive on operating income, which is going to be a great thing. If we take a closer look in the data center market, operating income is down a nice amount year over year, but it's pretty much flattish on a quarter over quarter basis. The company is spending a lot of money on R&D right now with the ramp production of all their new data center products. I do expect this to kind of calm down in the second half of this year and overall improve the gross margins that this company sees. The embedded market, even though revenue is down year over year, operating income is down very small. I do believe the embedded market to continue to be a nice cash flow machine for AMD, and that's really great news. Overall, the company is still free cash flow positive, which is great, but it is down a nice amount year over year and quarter over quarter, mainly because that client segment is unprofitable right now, and also that decrease in the data center market operating income due to the research and development. They did increase their cash and cash equivalents and short-term investments, and total debt is pretty much the same. I do believe I had a few other things to take a closer look at from their overall revenue segment. They did mention that inventory levels are up a nice amount sequentially. The main reason is because they are ramping up their advanced technology products. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I know sometimes investors look at inventories and see higher inventories and like, hey, this is probably bad news. It means they're not selling. That's not necessarily the case here for AMD. They're just ramping up for their MI300 and all the different flavors of their fourth generation server CPU. So we do expect that kind of inventory levels to go up. So overall, earnings were okay. I don't think I was completely shocked. I think the most shocking thing to have heard were those reports on the AI market. I think everything else was pretty much in line. I think maybe the other great thing that we did here is they are seeing great ramp up in adoption of their server CPUs. Let's just kind of repeat those two that I mentioned. They did mention, here we go in the data center, that revenue for their fourth generation EPYC CPUs nearly double quarter over quarter. So I do believe this was a really, really, really big bullish case for the company in their server CPU market. So I think that was one of the things that really surprised investors right now. Besides that, the only other thing that I believe investors are pretty excited about is that they are seeing strong engagement increase by more than 7 times in the quarter for their AI accelerator products, especially that Instinct. So most likely the MI250X and the MI300. I'm going to guess most of that is going to be for the MI300, but during their earnings call, they might explain a little bit more about their MI250 as well. So if you guys did enjoy, again, make sure to hit the thumbs up, make sure to hit the subscribe button. And again, this was just a top level overview. If you really want an in-depth on their earnings and the earnings call, make sure to hit that subscribe button. So take care, have a good day, and see you next time.